Hot news coming in. Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, has officially spoken out against the Biden administration, saying that he fully opposes the 100% tariff tax that the Biden administration has put on Chinese automakers, especially those selling EVs. And so this is major news because it is kind of contrary to what one might think that an American automotive manufacturer like Tesla would want. But in a statement from Elon himself, he said, neither Tesla nor I asked for these tariffs. Tesla competes quite well in the market in China with no tariffs and no differential support. And so this is really, really interesting because what's happened here is as of May 14th, so just a couple of weeks ago, the Biden administration announced that they are increasing the tariff from 25% on Chinese EVs to now 100%, which is, of course, a massive increase. And let's be real, they are fighting words, right? So, what exactly does this mean? And I'm so curious to know what the public opinion is about this kind of issue that's going on in the automotive market. Now, you can see many sides to it. Now, of course, there is a lot of geopolitical unrest between the US and China. They have been, putting a lot of tariffs, and it's just not from this administration. It was from the previous one as well. And they're really, it seems like, trying to protect the home turf of the US, try to maybe bring back manufacturing and protect some of the companies that are here in the US because it is so hard to compete against Chinese EV manufacturers purely when it comes to the pricing perspective. So, for example, if you look at one of the biggest automakers that is very now up and coming and sought after in China is BYD, right? And one of their lowest model cars is starting at about $11,000 USD, which is a phenomenal price for a brand new vehicle that seems to be of substance and quality and very affordable for, what could be the American people, right? If they started to bring their cars over to the US. And so what I think is happening is that the administration is like, well, as soon as China begins to bring their cars into the US, the American automakers that we are trying to support, take Ford, take any of the big ones that have been around for hundreds of years, they could definitely lose out on market share to a foreign country. And so they really want to try to preserve what's going on in the home state. Now, of course, with geopolitical unrest, there could be tons of stuff going on beneath the surface, and who really knows? But it is very interesting to see that Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, a company that is absolutely thriving and is actually getting closer and closer to competing to those price points. Now you can buy a slightly used Model 3 for about, 20,000, and if you go even more used, you can definitely get one in the range of 15 to 20,000, right? So those prices are starting to come down. But essentially, what happens with a tariff, right? It's a tax, and that tax usually gets passed on to the consumer. So when there is 100% tariff on something, so essentially what a company like BYD would do is if their car is originally priced at $11,000 and that's what it would be sold for, but because the US is saying, hey, no, you have to pay 100% tax on that to bring that into the country, well, then typically that gets passed on to the consumer. And now BYD is going to say, hey, no, actually, you know what? The starting price for that car is now going to be double, right? Because we have that 100% tariff. So they are adding on 100% of the value of the car to the price tag and passing it on to the consumer. So that BYD car goes from being 11,000 to then being 22,000, right? And so it makes them a little bit less competitive. But because China has the ability to manufacture at such low prices, they are really able to compete when it comes to lower prices. And of course, given today's economic sort of environment that we're in, where inflation is really high. The average consumer report came out where 70% of people in the US feel like they are in a personal recession. And then you read kind of like the broader economic reports from economists and experts that are saying, no, GDP is going up. So there is a huge sort of mismatch that is going on when it comes to the everyday consumer and when it comes to the macroeconomic picture, which could end up hurting the US potentially, or it could be a good thing for the consumer. So if the everyday consumer is saying, hey, you know what, inflation is high and I'm really feeling that, groceries, gas, cost of living is gone up and my money is just not going as far as it used to. And given what's happened in the last couple of years, car prices are high, used car values have remained high. So yeah, an $11,000 EV sounds great to me. Yes, China, please bring your cars here because it makes it easier for me to survive as a consumer. Now, on the other hand, when you hear the economic experts put out these reports saying, hey, you know what, GDP is increasing, we're doing well as an economy. One of the things that they don't really mention, or what a lot of people sort of fail to understand, is that we have seen a huge increase in prices, right? So a coffee that may have costed, $3 is now $6. And so the gross product, the gross sort of earnings of everything is naturally going to go up because everything costs more. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the economy is truly growing. It is only showing growth as a product of its gross revenue, gross production, because prices are higher, right? And there has just been these great charts where in 2019, an order of medium French fries from McDonald's was like $1.19, and today it's over $4. So people are really feeling the pain on a very micro level on the household front, that their money is just not going as far as it used to. So which makes it compelling to want to buy something like a BYD car that's going for $11,000, right? So there is a little bit of a mismatch there, but I'm just so curious to know what you guys think about that. Now, when we go back to what Elon said about this tariff, and I just want to quote him directly, he said, "Neither Tesla nor I asked for these tariffs. Tesla competes quite well in the market in China with no tariffs and no differential support." And a lot of the major automotive leaders that are out there, the CEOs of these big companies, they are actually, to my surprise as I researched this, they are in disagreement with this tariff. And the reason being is because these automakers, they compete on a global level, right? So they don't just sell in the US, they sell internationally all across the different countries. And if in retaliation, China's like, okay, well, if you're going to slap us with a 100% tariff, well, we're going to slap you guys with a tariff. Well, then it really makes it very difficult for these automakers to compete on a global scale, which is why they're not for it. And essentially what they're saying is, hey, leave the market free. Let us compete in the way that naturally the market demands, because we're doing quite well. And yes, China could come out and has come out with cheaper alternatives, but Tesla is still performing and outperforming a lot of these other automakers in international waters. So let us compete in the way that the market dictates is necessary. So it is kind of like a really interesting circumstance that's going on here. And I'm curious to know, what do you guys think about this? And the last thing that I'm going to just touch on, which in my research I found to be so fascinating, is, I remember that back in 2008, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Berkshire Hathaway, they did a massive investment into BYD. And I think they ended up purchasing almost about 9% of the company, right? It was over like 225 million shares into the company. And I believe they bought it at like $1 a share. Now, last November, it was a major story because usually Warren Buffett's investing strategy has typically been, or iconically been, that he holds on to anything he purchases forever, right? So for example, their firm has been holding on to American Express and Coca-Cola for decades and decades and decades, and they don't really have very many plans of selling. It really takes some dire circumstances for them to kind of break that rule of, hey, you know what, we actually need to get out of our position in this company. So in November of 2023, Warren and Charlie decided that they were going to divest a lot of their shares that were in that company. They were going to sell off a huge portion of it. And of course, they made a massive amount of profit. I think they ended up selling about 60% of their stake in the company. And they bought at $1 per share, and they sold at $30 per share, which was incredible. And Warren was quoted in so many of his interviews just saying that the CEO of BYD was incredible and he really excels at making things and he's actually better than Tesla and their product is better than Tesla. So then there was a lot of speculation around why Warren made that call because it is so unlike Berkshire Hathaway to sell a position like that, especially in that type of time frame. Now, of course, it was a hugely profitable um, adventure for them, right? And they did extremely well. But a lot of people speculate that they saw the geopolitical unrest on the horizon. I mean, obviously, this has been going on for a while now, and they really had the hunch that it's going to continue to escalate as it surely has. So, in order to, protect themselves and liquidate themselves a little bit, they decided to make that move. So, sometimes kind of looking outside of the main story can really help you gain a better understanding of what is happening. But I just found it fascinating that number one, Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway sold a huge stake of their holdings in BYD in November of 2023. Then May 4th, a Biden administration says, hey, we're going to hike up these tariffs from 25% to 100%, right? Which is a huge increase, even though automotive leaders have all voiced that, hey, we don't like this policy and it's not good for the industry. Sort of counterintuitive to what you might think of, oh, it's protecting the home front, but most people don't realize that these automakers in the US, Ford, GM, Tesla, they compete in a global market. So it's not just here on the home base. So they're not happy with this. And then finally, for Elon Musk and Tesla to come out and say, hey, we never asked for this. We don't agree with this. We don't want this because we do quite well in the markets, and the markets should dictate exactly what happens versus government. So comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. I just thought this was a major story, and I want to know what the public opinion is. Is it just the geopolitical unrest? Are there also sort of like safety and security issues there? Because essentially, if you're importing, a Chinese EV, a BYD car, is there security issues because that's essentially a computer that records everything that you do, right? And it reports back to the company, which is, of course, in China. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. Comment down below. I find this to be a fascinating topic. And if you like this video, hit that subscribe button and I'll be keeping you guys updated with more stuff along these lines.